honored to be on stage with all these guys. I share the stage enough with Sam, so I'm, you're okay. But some of these other guys up here, Simon Thorpe, all the way down there at the far end, Bump Williams, who this morning, early in the morning, said he had to possibly fly out tonight, and now it's tomorrow morning. So we're very grateful to have you here. Thank you. Rob Mitchell, who had stepped up as Bump's pinch hitter, and we left him in anyways, and we said, Rob, you're a great guy. And Sam, you obviously know, and Jeff Grebel from Wegmans. Rob is from Manhattan Beer Distributors. Bump runs his own consulting firm, for those who don't know, and he is a master of pricing, which is what we're talking about. Specifically, brands that are like Dogfish Head, premium priced. Really looking at the products that are about $50 per CE and above. And Bump has some amazing data that he shared last week with some of his clients, works with a number of clients across the industry. And I actually, in anticipation of you not being here, I took some notes and I transcribed a few of your data points. But basically the way, Bump, I'll have you, how do you break down the segment? Let's start there. How do you break down the craft pricing segment?
Yeah, we take a look at price to consumer. First of all the pricing that we're going to talk about today is price that consumers pay for beers. It has nothing to do with price to retailer or price to distributor. We're not talking about that. So that's an important part, I think, to understand. And then we looked at all the sales rates. We looked at total craft beer community, and we looked at all the sales rates, and the numbers kind of fell into four buckets. And this $30 to $39.99 bucket is just great introductory craft beer. Good craft beer, introductory level. And then the next level up was really the $40 to $49.99, and we think that's a premium craft price, that consumers are paying a premium craft price for that one, and there's phenomenal growth rate in that one. And then we go to really the $50 to $59.99, and that's super premium craft. The way that we've labeled it with our retail partners is that's a super premium craft beer. And again, growth rates get higher and higher the higher we go up in the price tier. And then anything really $59.99 and above, we call that Apex Craft. Thank you very much. Is there another one for me, or is just one? Okay, all right.
That's how well you do.
That's right. Oh, the more I drink, the better And then anything really above that $59.99, we call it Apex Craft. And again, that's the really eclectic, special release beers. I mean, Simon, you've got a portfolio in that area. Sam, you obviously have a number of brands in that portfolio. And what we found is that the higher we go in the price tier, the more consumers are thirsting to get those specialty beers, those release beers, the beers that they aspire to have in their hands. And that's the way we break data out.
And in some of your breakdown, you actually listed out a few of the data points. So just briefly before we jump into the questioning, so everybody kind of has a full, complete picture of what we're talking about. Premium crafts, which again were $40 to $49 per CE to the consumer, up 54% versus last year, and those
Plus
were dollar
54.
sales. Yep. Up 54%. And 24 of the top 25 brands there all grew sales. Super premium brands, again, $50 to $59, were up 51% versus a year ago. And those are brands like Grapefruit Sculpin, Elysian Space Dust, Allagash White, Dogfish Head. So a lot of brands that you guys probably recognize in there. And 42 of the top 50 Apex brands are all experiencing growth, and those are $60 and higher. Now, what I found interesting, although there's only, what I think you said 37 or so brands, was that the brands priced less than $20 per CE, there's only 37 of them in your data set, are also up 50%, and it's less than 1% of total brands. But I found it interesting that there was, sort of a bifurcation there. So you have brands that are less than 20, brands that are higher than 40, and that gap in the middle is where you're seeing some brands that are underperforming and some declines.
Yeah, one of the things that leads to growth numbers, and this is kind of how you have to tease the data out a little bit. I happen to like numbers. I thought Billy Bean, I taught him everything he knows. So, but what we try to look at is what we call organic growth. So I could go into new states, I could open up new markets, new territories, I could try and fill some distribution voids, and that's going to impact my dollar percent change versus year ago. So what we try and tease out is same store sales. And that's what we try and tease out in the data here. So it's an apples to apples comparison. So Sam, I don't know, when was the last time you opened up really a new market or two?
A new state, it's probably been 8 years.
Okay, so that's kind of my point in time here is we look at brands that are getting increased velocity in existing points of their market or their footprint. That's what we look at. And so when I measure profitability, and I talked to Jeff up at Wegmans about growth brands or high velocity brands, high profitable brands, I look at same apples to apples comparison, if that makes sense to you.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
So now that we understand your definition of all these brands, I think it's pretty clear, breaking it down by price. Let's kind of forget price for a minute, and I want to go down the line and kind of hear your personal definitions of what you believe a super premium craft beer to be. I think of things like the story that they're telling or the imagery on the brands, like what that brand evokes. What is a super premium craft? And we'll start with Simon. What is a top of the pyramid brand for you? What does that look like?
Top of the pyramid, at least, take a brewery like Ommegang. Small brewery, upstate New York, right at the top of the pyramid in terms of quality. And beers that we're able to sell, let's say a 750, somewhere between $20 and $35 for a 750. That to us is the top of the apex for that particular brewery. And what are the characteristics of them? They're beers that have something very, very unique about them, and it kind of sounds obvious to say it, but they've had part of the process or part of the ingredients or part of the way the packaging is developed that makes it worthwhile. And I think when you think about, well, why is it worthwhile? What makes it worthwhile? We spend an awful lot of time being obsessed with how people think, the mindset that they have when they're drinking our beer, when they're buying our beer. And these are beers that people, they almost come to the brewery to find these beers that they cannot find anywhere else. And there is something about the process of coming to the brewery to get them right from the source that makes them very valuable to people. They make it worthwhile. So I think part of it is about finding a beer that you cannot get anywhere else. We can have a series of beers in our portfolio that are available in more mainstream distribution, but the real top of the pyramid for us is the things that are really rare, really special. They have often, it could be barrel aged with something peculiar in it. But to me, I don't think that's always the important bit. The important bit is the rarity of it and the fact that people come with this mindset of saying, I want to find something that is really special, that I can only get when I went to the brewery and I had that adventure and I had that experience of going to the source of the place. And at that point then, it's almost that because they're paying so much money for it, they really imbue the beer with that, the value within that $20 to $35 price range. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how do you take something like that to the retail level, whether it's a product that isn't quite like the one that you described, but maybe just a notch below? How do you sell that in to the retail level? And I'll kick this to Rob. What's your message in selling in a brand like that, and what is the appetite for those brands from the retailers that you're dealing with?
Generally, the appetite's pretty good because the retailer, the specialty retailer, their consumer, that beer buyer knows about them, right? They're asking for when's La Folie coming in? When Rodenbach Alexander just got released, we got 100 cases for New York, right? You have to allocate them times. You have to make sure your partners understand that they're not going to be able to get 100 of these. There's only going to be a couple of cases per store. And they want them, right? Because that helps that specialty retailer get more people to their location, right? Allen at halftime, right? Allen Daniels, halftime beverage. Me and Sam both know him in my market. He calls Sam, when's it coming? I need that stuff, because that, to them, brings them in. Even for a Wegmans, right? They want to have those too. They want to be a destination. So the smart retailer understands how important that top end is. as it trickles down to more the old school retailers, they start saying, wait a minute, what is Whole Foods doing that I'm not? What is Wegmans doing that I'm not? And how can I evolve my store to get my basket ring up, right? Which is what they want. They
Yep.
want to trade their consumers up, and these brands help them do that.
Yep. Jeff, for you, how much space are you allocating to the brands that are, $50 per CE and above? How much space do you have for them, and what are your plans in your stores to either grow that space or keep it the same? And what is the long-term plan for those types of brands?
For the Apex brands that we're talking
for
about?
the super premium
Super
Apex
premium?
brands.
I think that in many instances, they are the seasonal, the limited release, especially limited release. And we prefer to kind of have them out on a stack out or something that's going to really catch that customer's attention. A lot of them don't get caught into our planogram, not because we don't support them. We very much support them for all the reasons you were saying. We have customers looking for them, right? That's first and foremost in any retailer's mindset is, what's my customer looking for? That's what I want to have on the shelf. But B, and I think of similar importance, is that credential. If we don't have those items, especially at stores that are kind of focused craft stores for us, we don't have the credential out there in the craft community to be a source for that. So those are and will continue to be very important for us, but we don't always cut them into the set because a lot of times those are only available for a limited time.
Right.
So we'll stack it out, make sure the customer can see it, have our folks in the stores talking about it, and then when it sells out, we're on to the next one. But they're very important to us.
So maybe I should take a step back. How do you guys create your set? Like, what does your set look like if we're thinking about the pricing tiers that Bump laid out? How much of it is dedicated to the larger domestic brands? How much of it is craft? And within craft, how are you splitting up the share between the different price gaps there?
Honestly, I'd love to tell you that we have this big scientific formula that we use that, you put in the price and it cranks up. But I'll tell you, with what's going on the last few years now and, for the foreseeable future, the proliferation of new brands, different brands, things he might be doing, but things that might be getting brewed right around the corner from one of our stores. It's art more than science at this point, and we really don't look at it as far as, well, I'm going to have 60% of my set is going to be six-packs at $10.99 or under, right? That's a very sweet price point. There's a lot of sales in that. But we allocate space based on, what our customers are telling us, which is really how many units are you selling of different things. Premium beers, your premium light lagers continue to be a very important piece of business for us, but they are losing share. As craft continues to grow share, 2-3 share points every time we look at it. But they're still important to us.
Right. Sam, as a brewer who specializes in creating these products and having sold them for 20 years now, why do you feel it is important to have this area of the segment, at all? Why is it important to have craft brands that are priced $50 per CE and above? And what's the opportunity, the long-term opportunity going forward for brands like yourself as well as new players entering the space to compete in that field?
Frankly, I think it's critical, again, for indie craft that we keep innovating, upwards in the pricing world. I like Bump. I really enjoyed Billy Bean's talk this morning, and at the heart of it, it was about look at what the data set of the giants are focused on, and you're never going to win if you're focused on that data set and you're a David. And really, so the sexy stat of home runs in the world of baseball, I would equate that to the sexy stat of top-line revenue growth in the world of beer. And if your messaging around your portfolio is asking the retailers to think about triangulating their business instead of against the cheapest, most discounted beer and velocity, because there's going to be some parity there if the cheaper the velocity is there, and instead triangulate against velocity, because that has to be a factor, and price per CE. So maybe the brands that are in the $50 to $60 price point aren't getting quite the velocity of the one at the 25 number, but if they really focus on that retail price of that single case and the velocity is still strong, not number one or number two or number three in the craft segment, that's the beers that they're going to win with.
Right.
I want to add to some things that Jeff talked about, and Simon and Sam, obviously, Rob, you too, but you're a pinch hitter for me, so you don't get over it. I guess there's a couple things. When we look at consumer purchase behavior, when we look from the time that they first come into the beer category, what are they buying? And where are they buying it, and how frequently, and how much are they buying? And what we've noticed is that there's got to be a beer for every occasion. I mean, Simon, your portfolio, you've got them from the rookies all the way up to Hall of Famers. And Sam, you do the same thing. You play in every field, and that addresses a lot of different drinking occasions, and I think that's important. The second thing we noticed was that when we look at consumer purchase behavior, when I come into the category initially, when I first break into really better beer or high-end beer, craft beer, when I start to move up that pyramid of purchase behavior, and I go from craft to premium, and then premium to super premium, and then super premium to craft, to Apex craft, I very rarely come back down. And I think that's a big difference, or a big point of differentiation to point out is that when they move up, it's like a badge of honor. You know,
Right.
I finally graduated from minor league rookie ball or Florida ball. Now I'm in the show, and I think that's the things. When I look at Sam, I had a retailer say, "Bump, I've got one 120 for you. I can sell you one 120." You know, I'm
One
saying,
bottle.
okay, I'm gonna call Sam and see if, no, I can't. I'll buy it. So we see it, people go up this craft pyramid, and they very rarely come back down. And then I happen to think that the brands that you guys have in that upper tier are really good points of differentiation, not just for the brewers, not just for the retailers, not just for the distributor network, but for the consumer themselves.
Right.
And I think those are things when we look at consumer purchase behavior, that's what we look at.
But isn't the inherent problem there that you're dealing with velocity issues both at the retail level and at the manufacturing level? I mean, brewers gotta move liquid, and retailers also have to worry about their velocities as well.
Okay, let's not confuse strategies with tactics. Strategy is I may take a hit on my efficiencies at a brewery to come out with a very eclectic, collectible, high-end demand brand. I might take a hit on that one, but it's given the consumers and the retailers and my distributor partners a brand across all different price points or portfolio offerings. And I'm going to take a hit on that tactically. But strategically, I've just done a great job at really delivering a beer with a point of differentiation. And it's a good balance between tactics and strategies. And I think that's what successful brewers today are doing.
Well, yeah, I'd echo that, Bump. I think we were talking earlier about how those items give retailers credential, but I think they give brewers credential too, right? Beer is not something my customers have to buy, right? We like to think they feel like they have to buy deodorant, right? Have to buy toothbrush. I hope so, right? They don't have to buy beer. And the craft consumer, it's fun for them. We talk about a certain customer, we call them lifestylers. And, they're people who, and the name says it all, it's a lifestyle for them, right? Not only are they doing, the way we can tell the difference to some extent is what else do they have in their cart, right? So if they have one of Sam's products and they also have specialty cheese in their cart and maybe baguettes, that's probably a lifestyler, right? They're enjoying it, they take it personally. Those folks want to be challenged. And they want to try new things, and they want to go up the ladder and, and challenge themselves, and to some extent, if you think about it, challenge the brewers. And I think if a brewery doesn't have those new and exciting things, they kind of lose excitement, the excitement around their brand, because a customer may never try they may never try 120, but they might know that 120 and 60 Minute are brewed by the same brewery. And they might go, oh, I've heard of Dogfish, right? And bang, they buy in 60 Minute. I don't know, but I think there's something to that.
Right. Simon, how much opportunity is there for brewers all across the country to, sort of take Bump's advice, I guess, of having a very broad, balanced portfolio of different offerings? How many of those companies can actually coexist in the space? Ones that are offering, a different beer for a different occasion. I mean, if everybody's playing from the same playbook, it seems like things would get pretty challenging. So how much opportunity is there?
Look, just to start off, I'm starting to get worried about this panel already because I realise now that I'm sitting in the chair where the English sit. And I've started, now we're kind of like 10 minutes in, I've started to figure this panel out already. So, David, well, and you can substitute Village Idiot for English whenever you want to. Right? The second thing is, I live in Kansas City, Missouri, all right, and the word baguette has not figured a lot in conversations that I've had recently.
Wait a minute. He used bifurcate earlier, and no one said anything about that.
Hey, I was told 75% of my audience wouldn't know that word, so I went with it.
I don't know. I mean, the questions about portfolio, and I think we really think about mindset in different usage occasions and different purchase occasions, and I think we can really usefully use a lot of the analysis of the numbers, and you can see trends, and you can see where the apex is growing, and so on. It's real interesting. When boiled down, all the numbers really tell us is how people are behaving, what they're thinking when they approach the shelf set or they approach a tap handle. And we spend a lot of time thinking about how to get in the head of people when they are walking into a bar on a Friday night. What are they thinking? What's in their head? So that we can then pitch beers directly at them so that it nails exactly how they feel. Now, to give you a couple of examples, I think that we have different pricing sensitivity for different times during the week. So imagine your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday beer. For a lot of craft brewers, that's been Sierra since the day it was born, because it's reliable and it's relatively inexpensive, and you can buy it at the grocery store and you pick it up when you pick up your groceries. So that's kind of my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday beer. You'll notice that I drink beer every day of the week. I don't want no judging, all right, please. Come Thursday, you're in a different frame of mind and you're looking for a different beer. You're relatively becoming less and less price sensitive as you go towards the weekend, in theory. So come Saturday night, you're out, you're experimenting, you're finding what's new is in your vocabulary, whereas in the early part of the week, you're thinking much more about reliable things. And so during the course of the week, the price sensitivity changes, and it really changes depending on where you are and what the situation is. And we've often seen, as we track beer drinkers during the course of an evening on a Saturday night, and let's say because you're English, you're working your way through 12 pints or so, you might start with a big beer, perversely, if you're English. And that's what it's called, priming. And there's a reason I live in America, all right? Let's just leave it at that. So you might start with a big beer, but then you'll transition during the evening, and you can flip-flop between things. And I think as we think about the relative price sensitivity, you can be more or less sensitive depending also on the company that you are with. And there's one thing that, just to kind of wrap this little bit up, that someone said to me last week, I was in Chicago, and we were talking about a $20 bill. And can you walk into a grocery store and come out with 2 six-packs and still have change from a $20 bill? And a lot of people think that way. And as we think about some of these critical thresholds, I think some of our price tiers are really bumping up against them at the moment. And a couple of really cool things have happened in the last 6 months or so. People have started to break through some of those thresholds. And lo and behold, it's okay. And I think, going back to Sam's point earlier, I think we've got to challenge ourselves to say, can we lift pricing? Because the better pricing is as a small brewer, the more chance you've got of being able to survive and thrive, because your profitability's there, your cash flow's there, and you're not struggling to make a margin. So the bottom line of this is the more that we can justify with our quality, with our consistency, with just fabulous beers, the more that people will value them and they will be prepared to pay more for them. That makes the whole system work so much better.
And I would say that I think the beers, I think Sam's beers, I think Allagash, obviously Simon's beers, have crossed that threshold and gotten enough critical mass at that premium price point, that next price point up, that it's now viable, which helps the small craft brewer. Because before that, when you would go in and go to see a Wegmans as an example, and he'd be a $12.99 six-pack, the buyers would be like, no, six-packs only sell at $10.99. You got to get to $10.99. The craft brewer's going, the small guy's going, I can't get to $10.99, right? But as the numbers start to show that no, IPAs, right? The premium craft is selling at that higher price point because everybody's IPAs cost more. And the consumer wants to pay more. He's not afraid of it. There's a value proposition that they say, I expect to pay more. If
Right.
it's line priced, right? People like to get line priced. That way you can get an ad feature. It actually hurts your brand to some extent because they say there must be something wrong with that. If he can get his IPA down to $10.99 and all the others are 12s in this set, you know?
Yeah, and to take it one step further, or perhaps I guess one step removed from the customer exchange with the retailer, let's talk about the distributor exchange, with the retailer and with the brewer. I mean, you guys are in the middle of all this, so what about managing all of these different price segments, and as you sit here and you listen to guys like Sam and Simon talk about the importance of having these premium $50 per CE brands out there, and elevating prices and the importance of that, how do you manage that, with your partners, with your supplier partners, as a prominent distributor as you are in New York? And what are some strategies for starting to negotiate the go-to-market plans with you, and how do you stay I guess true to your word when you've got other influences too from some of the bigger guys?
As the distributor, we want the prices to go up as well, right? We need that. As Sam said before, we got 1 million square foot of warehouse space, but we really can't get any more in New York City. We can, but it becomes cost prohibitive. Adding SKUs, it starts to become cost prohibitive. So we want to be able to step things up. We want brewers who have price stratification, that we can get the things that are in the limited release and in the 22s, and at the same time take them and be able to say, no, six-packs can be viable at $12.99 in the city, right? Which is $10.99 everywhere else, or maybe $9.99 in upstate New York. So we want to see that. We want to be able to work with our partners to come to an understanding that low prices don't necessarily sell you that much more beer. Right? To a point, right?
I get it.
Right, and I sell a lot of Sam Adams, and that's at a different price point, and Ballast Point exploding at a much different price point, which then really says to everybody, wow, $12.99 used to be that next tier of six-packs. Now it's Grapefruit Sculpin at $16, $17.99 in the city, and nobody blinks an eye.
But I think as a retailer, I would say, and I don't disagree with anything you just said, I think as a retailer, what am I trying to say here? As that price point goes up, it should be based on a bettering of the quality of the beer, the price-value relationship for my consumer. I guess I would say what it can't be about is just the whole industry says, let's take price up. Mm-hmm. It can't be that, right? Customers are not dummies. They're going to understand. And sometimes it's Ballast Point Grapefruit Sculpin. If there's anybody here from Ballast Point, they know. I love that beer. I think it's a fantastic beer. But I got to tell you, I'm not sure what it is about that beer that lets it sell at $14.99 a six-pack. The thing that I get concerned about, it's a great beer, but there's a lot of great beers, right? But there's something about the perceived value of that package, right, that lets it sell, which is great. It's fantastic. We sell a ton of it. But I think one thing that scares me a little bit is since that brand has been so successful, I've had a number of brewers and a few distributors, but not so much. A number of brewers say, wow, the new price point in upstate New York is $14.99 for a six-pack. No. One six-pack sold at $14.99, and there was something psychological about that, and it was a home run. It remains a home run. Grapefruit's doing fantastic. But I think it's important that we understand that it can't be just about, hey, let's take prices up. Prices, as customers move up those price tiers, there needs to be an increasing value relationship of the beer to the price, I guess is where I was going. But I don't disagree with anything you said I just want to make that clarification.
And Jeff, you are my favorite person on this panel right now because that is the perfect segue for my next question.
That's how I help. I add value.
You read the notes. Hey, student. So I guess let's talk about that. I mean, you sort of alluded to the fact that Ballast Point has some kind of it factor that is allowing it to sell at that price point. And my question is, how long does that last as a brewer? This is sort of for Sam. How do you maintain that it factor for your brands that allows you to convey the sort of premium value that you are to the consumer? And what's the long-term viability of a business plan built on, being the sort of it beer that can command that price?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that trajectory is going to be different for every brewery, and I'm very thankful that Bump and Junior created the nomenclature so we can now be talking the same language about these categories, but because 90-minute and 120-minute worldwide stout, those have been selling in what's now the apex category in the case of 90-minute for well over a decade now at that price point. So it can be sustainable. But when as I think about it as an indie craft brewer, when you think of what got this renaissance of good beer going in America, when it started, I think Charlie or Bob Pease this morning said at our worst point we were down to under 70 breweries, and that's when there was really one continent of beer, the light lager continent, and then breweries like Sierra and Sam Adams differentiated with some styles that got people out on this bridge, this flavor bridge, and they'd take a baby step into a white beer or a pale ale and maybe up $1 a six-pack or $2 up a six-pack. And as Bump said, very rarely does someone start making that journey off of light lager, terra firma, and then say, fuck it, that was stupid, I'm going back, Very rarely does that happen. And the same thing can be said for pricing within the world of craft, I think. The categories of sub-premium and premium in the light lager world have existed forever, and yet there's only a stratification of like $5 or $10 between those worlds. And here we are talking about these different categories of craft that represent, $30, $40, $50 of stratification. And if people start going back towards cheap, not just back towards light lager, but if we commodify IPA as a style and make it part of that terra firma, and people start going back off the price bridge and back down there, only one brewery in the world wins.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe I said fuck it, but I wish I had, because I happen to like that word. But
That's one word?
In New York City it is.
The pinch hitter comes through.
Well played.
He got his redemption.
But all I want, I don't know what brewers. I know what some brewers are afraid of, and taking up price. The aggressive brewers, the brewers that are looking forward, that understand the value of their beer. They understand what that consumer inelasticity of purchasing a higher priced beer. They understand that. There are some brewers in the United States that are afraid to take price up because they've commoditized the beer, and not only have they commoditized the beer, they've commoditized the category, and that's wrong. So I look at brewers like Simon, I look at Sam, I look at Rob Todd, I look at these great brewers, Kenny Grossman obviously, Jim Cook, these guys are phenomenal brewers. They've never been afraid to play in an arena where the big guys aren't playing, and that has made the difference in my mind. I could say a couple more things, but I'm afraid I might say the fuck word again, and that would be a bad thing. So, anyway,
I would say, Chris, with anything, any consumer packaged goods, as long as it meets your expectations time and time again, you're going to continue to pay that price, right?
Right.
If a BMW, whatever it is, you could buy a cheaper car, but if you have the money and you want to buy a BMW, and every time you buy one, it meets your expectations. Doesn't have to exceed them because you've set your expectations. And if it's Dogfish 60, 90, 120, whatever it is, every time it meets your expectations, that on-premise account you go to where the pints are $2 more, but every time you go in there, it's served in a perfectly beer-clean glass with 2 inches of nice foamy head on the top, and your food comes out and it exceeds your expectations, you're going to pay for it.
Right.
Chris, I'm
I
not
agree,
done yet.
I agree
I'm not-
entirely.
oh,
I think
sorry,
this
go
is
ahead.
a really important point for me because if the experience of buying a beer in a Wegmans, you walk into a Wegmans store, they're beautiful. You walk into other stores, they're not so beautiful. You approach it with a completely different mindset. You walk into a beautiful restaurant, they present you with a beer menu. It's like paradise. And I mean, you're working your way through this list of beautiful names, and there's romance, there's a narrative. It just makes an experience of drinking these beautiful beers even better. At that point, your price sensitivity has just gone out the door and left and disappeared on a train across the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, in that sense, you're looking for a better experience. And as we think about, go back to your first question right at the top of the panel about what is it that justifies these kind of pricing for beers at the apex, a lot of it is about the experience of being at the brewery. You go on an adventure, or you have it served absolutely perfectly in a wonderful place, or you're in a store that just surrounds you with the feeling of, I've really enjoyed buying this. And to me, that's the guts of why people pay what they do for beers that operate at the apex.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that I would echo that 100%. I'd look at it a little differently because I'm a retailer. I think that retailers, on-premise, off-premise, we need to own exactly what you're talking about and present it to the customer in a fashion that is befitting of the liquids that they are. And I think we need to engage customers. We need to talk to customers. One of the things we talk a lot about internally is there's a huge group of customers, and there's a range of experience with craft beer, but they're a big group of customers. We think of them as aspirers. And in many instances, they don't know where to break into craft beer, but they want to be successful, right? So they want that first or second try to really be successful and get a product that they really enjoyed and they're okay with the price of it. So that's where, in our store, sampling and those kinds of things come in. The last thing I ever want, and we joke about it, is the dreaded 5-pack. So a customer gets a 6-pack home, has one beer, hates the beer, tries to unload it on their brother-in-law forever, right? I always pick on the brother-in-law. I don't know why. But I think that, in many ways, is incumbent on the retailers to figure out a way. I think, and I don't really do any on-premise, but, to Simon's point, I think the on-premise retailer has to own that presentation. Use the right glassware. Pour it correctly. Make things beer clean. It makes a difference, right? Don't let the customer smell soap in the glass. Those kinds of things are very important, because then the customer tries it and goes, I see why I spent this. This is really good.
So really communicating the value of the beer.
Right, and as an on-premise retailer,
in every
bring
facet.
that customer in and help them be successful, or excuse me, an off-premise retailer, bring that customer in and help them be successful.
So we're butting up against time here, and I know we got a hard stop. So one final question for you guys, and we've talked a lot about elevating the pricing, but let's just briefly talk about what happens if a brewer decides to take price downward and decides to push that pricing lever and say, listen, my sales are down, I'm declining 8, 9, 10%, my flagships are down, I need to compete on price, I'm a craft brewer, I need to compete on price. What happens to the category then? Do others follow? Do those pricing tiers start to change? Does a $33 case become a $29 case? And then what's the value of a $53 case at that point? What's the message being sent to the consumer if a craft brewer decides to do that? What happens when somebody pushes the price lever?
I think they probably weren't earning the tier that they were in. And I don't mean that from an effort standpoint. I mean, that price-value relationship. And if their price comes down, well, maybe they now, if their units pick up, maybe now they're earning that price point. But I don't think it needs to affect anyone else who was selling well, and in the customer's eyes, they were the beer was earning the price point. I don't think they need to all, drop price and follow suit. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think it's always it's bad, right? Prices going down is bad. It's hard to bounce back from, right? Add feature price short term, give that consumer the perception of, hey, I got something that is valued here and I got it for here. That is great. I'm thankful for my retailer for doing that for me. I'm going to go back and buy more for him. But when it becomes that price gets brought down, then how are you, but it's still an $8 pint, and now it's a $13.99 12-pack. Wait a minute, there's something wrong there. It used to be a $16.99.
Yep.
And just to add to that, I think if you've got, as a small brewer, we know how competitive it is. If you've got trends of a beer that's been in your portfolio a while that aren't strong, instead of reflexively hitting the pricing button, we've all talked about the value of storytelling and the value of differentiation. Get as creative as you did with your recipes to figure ways to bring value-added communication to your retailers, to the consumer, that might be, hey, I'm going to invest in a sampling program at Wegmans to talk about how well differentiated this liquid is, before you go, hey, I'm going to go to Wegmans and say I'm going to take $3 off a case.
Yeah, so thinking creatively about your options before hitting the price button, basically. Awesome, guys. This has been very, very insightful. Round of applause for these guys. And in all honesty, this conversation was about, we allocated about half the time that we needed to for it. So if you have any questions for them, grab a beer with them at some point this week or tonight. Pick their brains. Big thank you to Dogfish Head for hosting us.
Thank you to Ashley and Neil and Dogfish.
A big thank you to all of our sponsors who supported this. We announced them earlier, but Brewery Pack, OY, West Rock, Markham Homage, all the folks over here, G&D Chillers, Avery Dennison, Prairie Capital, and Vicinity Brew. Thank you. I know a lot of them are in the audience today, so thank you. If you like what we did here, Brewbound session on June 9th in Brooklyn. We hope to see you there. That's our full-day conference. And one final thing, we raised over $5,000 tonight for the Brewers of Pennsylvania. So thank you to all the attendees, and let's have a beer. Cheers.